Hello, and welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm. You may have noticed a little different environment for this program. Got outside, out of the Truth and Rhythm studios, into the nice, bright North Carolina nature environment. Was inspired with, you'll notice toward the end of this show, the lighting was not so great in the Truth and Rhythm studios. The lights went out basically near the end of the broadcast. And so rather than have that cave-like environment, got outside for a little fresh air. So welcome, as always, to the program, brought to you by funkinstuff.net. This is the show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. Available in video format at funkinstuff.net and on YouTube. It's also available in its audio podcast version from iTunes and other leading providers. I am your host, Scott Dr. Goldfine, musicologist and author of Everything is on the One, the First Guide to Funk. Whether you're watching or listening, as always, I thank you very much for your interest and continued support. This episode features Jara Harris, the multi-instrumentalist founder of West Coast-based funk band SlapBak. Coming from a musical family, playing instruments and performing came naturally to Harris at an early age. As he grew up, he drew from several influences that included not just funk, but also new wave rock and more. That sonic fusion would later inform SlapBak's lively sound, or lively brand of fiery funk. After gigging locally for a few years as Jarasound, he logged his first professional recordings as a member of Randy Jackson's 1989 album, Randy and the Gypsys. Basically a one-man band in the studio, Harris recruited a group of musicians that in 1990 were dubbed SlapBak. Signed to Warner Brothers, the act's first album arrived in stores in 1992. Food Funkateers was fortified by funk giants Larry Blackmon of Cameo and P-Funk luminaries including George Clinton and Bootsy Collins. The presence of those guests drew me to the record and also to catching SlapBak's energetic live shows. Unfortunately, that was to be SlapBak's only major label release, and although the group continued to release several albums and lots of first-rate funk through the ensuing years, Harris's act was victimized by the industry's fickle times and record company shenanigans. Although Harris went on to work with other artists, such as En Vogue, Cameo, The Times, Stevie, Salas, and Bernard Fowler, and European funkers Dodge and OctavePussy, he still kept SlapBak alive and maintained a loyal following with the underground-style existence. All told, 9 albums have been made available to the public, although some are compilations. Speaking of which, 2014's Best of Funk Mayhem has the lion's share of great SlapBak throwdowns. They include Kickin' the Do, Sway, We Come the Jam, The Key, It's Time to Go, Pure Funk, and You Get in My Mind. Perhaps the best way to describe SlapBak's sound is Cameo, run through hip-hop sensibility, covered with P-Funk, with strokes of new wave, and of course, a heavy helping of Harris's infectious sense of adventure and zaniness. Harris also unleashed his first solo album called Only in 2012, which is a terrific showcase for his versatility. In this program, Harris recounts the ups and downs of his career in music and life in general. He talks about the amazing talents he's been able to work with. He discusses his own creative muses and instrumental facility and what's yet to come, both musically and cinematically. Yes, he's also working in film. Jara was definitely a lot of fun to talk to, and I enjoyed being able to relive some of my previous life in his Southern California stomping grounds. I hope you're enjoying the sound of the birds here. I know I am. I hope you'll enjoy this show. Thanks for tuning in once again.
I'm so pleased to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Studios, Jara Harris, co-founder and leader of West Coast funk band SlapBak, and a gifted multi-instrumentalist, composer, and producer. Jara, how are you today?
I'm great. I just have one question. Where did you get co-founder from? It's really only me, actually, to be honest.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you're your brother or whatever, you know.
Yeah, but that's good. You know the story after today. Because, yeah.
Okay. You got to fill us in on that and, of course, everything else. And you're coming to us from Los Angeles, right?
Orange County. Which they would say Los Angeles back when we were on Warner Brothers, because not too many people knew of Orange County back then except for Disneyland. So, that's changed since then. But, yeah. They used to say LA band, but in reality, I'm from Orange County. We're from Orange County.
Yeah, 714 area code representing.
Yeah. Yes. And the 949.
Yeah, well, that's a newer one, but yeah. So we were
Yeah.
talking before we got on air. Of course, I'm from Los Angeles
Yeah.
originally, and I still have my 310 number, so I held on to
Nice. I noticed that.
that.
I noticed that.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me today. We finally got together, and I see
Yeah,
you're in your we're talking, that's your studio in progress that you're working on, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's actually, it's really exciting. It's like starting, it is starting all over again, actually, you know? So it's funny because I started, we were staying in a hotel for 4 months before we, found the house. And, but I still can be without doing music. So I bought like a little mixer and I was doing stuff in the hotel. And it felt like when I first started, when I was 16, working on 4-track, So it was weird going from, the studio to just the basics, which I liked. So I'm like starting all over again.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, the area had tremendous issues with fires last year, and unfortunately, you were affected by that.
Funny thing is, the LA fires weren't even close to our complex. So basically, I had a studio that landlord let me turn into a studio loft. So it was a studio, and my wife and I lived there. So it was away from everything. It was a random thing that just happened to happen that day, and no one knows where it started from. But there was no fires near us.
Wow.
But all those fires were happening at the time, so a lot of people thought that it was tied in with that, but it wasn't. And but the winds were crazy, so the whole complex came down in less than 5 minutes. It happened so fast.
Wow.
Yeah, and all I could think was to do run in and grab my laptop and my external hard drive because I was editing a movie at the time, and it's all I saved, and a couple of cameras, no music stuff.
So how much music do you estimate that you lost?
It's pretty depressing, man, because I not only did I lose the music that I had recorded there, and I've been there for 17 years, but I just recently pulled out. I was going to do a CD, like a CD mixtape of all my early funk stuff, like when I first started recording on the 4-track stuff. And most people don't know the first album. I had my 4-track there the whole time because we were always trying to emulate the sound on the 4-track because it had such a funky, dirty sound. So we were always compare in the studio, and we had a really hard time. We were like, oh, it's too clean, But the 4-track stuff just sounded so dirty and funky. And I just gotten those cassette tapes, and I just bought a 4-track that I could transfer it. So I literally had even the stuff I first ever started recording when I was 16. All that burned in the fire because it all happened to be there at that time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you got to be thankful to God that nobody got hurt.
Absolutely. That was the main thing. That was the main thing.
And then I sensed through Facebook and social media that there was a tremendous outpouring from friends and fans.
And I got to tell you, that was the biggest thing I got out of the whole thing, is just realizing or being reminded how people really can be, and with social media and everything, people, you see so much crap of people getting caught up into things, but when the real situation happens, you see how people really can be. And it was such a good reminder, and it really did something for me, actually.
That's fantastic.
I mean, yeah, believe me, I'm not crying. Like, everything's good right now. I'm actually excited for a whole new venture,
That's great. Rising out of the ashes.
That's right. Yes. I've heard that somewhere before.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to have you take us way back to how you got started in music, and then step us up to how SlapBak got founded, which you mentioned was not a co-founding situation. So,
Right.
How did you first get into music, Jara?
My family, I started playing in the family band when I was 4 years old. We were kind of like the Jacksons, and uh, I was kind of the feature of the thing because my brothers were 16 and 15. My sister was 13, and then there was a 4-year-old drummer. And at that time, you know, this is back in 1973. You know, it wasn't something you would see all the time. It's not like YouTube where we can go in and watch a bunch of these kids like, you know, whipping on instruments, but it was kind of a freak thing. And we did that. We had a producer looking at us from A&M at the time. And then my brother ended up leaving it in 76 to go play with the Silvers.
Mhm.
And then the family band kind of, you know, dismantled. Then I got to be a kid, a normal kid for a while from age 7 to age 11. And then the family band got back together, started playing again. And that experience, I guess, being older, being like a teenager doing it, you know, you start picking up stuff, picking up things a lot more. When you're younger, you have this ability to do, you know, play drums. You don't know that it's a talent, or you don't, you know, you take it for granted when you're just young doing it. But when I reached like the age 13, I really had this itch for really wanting to do music. You know, that was my choice for the first time. And believe it or not, I saw Missing Persons on MTV, and Terry Bozzio just really inspired me as a drummer. And it's funny because my biggest, I guess, legacy, if that's what you want to call it, is with funk. And the funk community really embraced me because of that first record. But my older brothers and sisters, you know, that was the era of like Parliament and all that stuff for them. My era really was like Bobby Brown and Guy and, you know, Rage Against the Machine. And that was really, you know, like in my late teens, early 20s, that was my era really. But then I met up with Norman Whitfield Jr. and Howie Rice. You know, Norman Whitfield Sr. heard it through the grapevine, and his son heard my demo tape, and I started working with him. So he started turning me on to all this funk stuff. And he's like, "Hey, you're funky, but check this out." You know what I mean? Because funk to me at the time was really Purple Rain or Morris Day and the Time. Not that they're not, you know, because they are, but they're a more crossover type of funk. But I feel like you always have to start somewhere. You can't come right in and hear P Funk and get it unless it's like Flashlight or something like that. So he was playing me stuff, and I'm like, whoa, whoa. You know, like I don't know about this. You know, it didn't really hit me. That came from like Duran Duran, Missing Persons, and you know, Prince was like funk to me. And the more I got into that, the more I started getting deeper and deeper into funk stuff. So I learned it when the funk era was phasing out. So it was really weird because I feel like SlapBak's contribution to funk was like as it was phasing out, except for the hip hop artists were starting to sample it. So my whole idea was Lenny Kravitz had just come out with his first record, and I heard him like, oh, that's just Beatles and Jimi Hendrix and you know, and it had such a great. But I like the fact that he was able to capture the genuine sound of like the Beatles, and he did such a good job doing it. And I thought, well, it'd be kind of cool to do, you know, like a real old school funk band since everyone's sampling now and just do straight funk. So it was actually like people kind of trip out when I tell them this too, because they just think I grew up in funk and, you know, I grew up smelling funk, and that wasn't the case. But we got so into it, and then that's when it became a band, because before that it was Jarasound, and I recorded all the instruments and recorded all this stuff, and I had like you know, guys in Orange County that didn't really know what funk was, but I would teach them the parts just so I could play it live. So that's why I was getting back to the story that it really wasn't a co-founder situation. It was I had my own band with Jarasound, and then I got Crank and Chainsaw and Scotty Bravo. The four of us kind of became more of a team. Then I decided like, oh, this feels like a real band now. So then I decided to come up with SlapBak, you know. And
So SlapBak first came about in what year?
1990.
Mm-hmm.
1990. And it's really interesting because we got interest from Warner Brothers that same year. And the only reason why I think we had more people looking at us is because my brother and I had just come off of doing Randy and the Gypsys.
Randy Jackson.
Right.
Yeah.
So we would do like LA coconut teasers and advertise, you know, brothers from Randy and the Gypsys. And that helped. I think people at least look at it. But I have been doing the circuit since '87 with Jarasound. So a lot of the bands up there already knew who I was through Jarasound.
Who was maybe the biggest act that you played with as Jarasound?
Biggest act probably at the time was they were called Chain Reaction. And they were like we used to do the Roxy. We play with them. And they were kind of big because they were big guys in the whole locking era. They were some of the locking dancer pioneers, and they had a soundtrack on that movie Salsa or something like that. So at the time, it was still all the pay-to-play stuff. So we weren't playing with any huge known acts. We were like, hey, you can play the Roxy, sell 100 tickets, sure, you can play. You know what I mean? Sell 100 tickets, you can play the whiskey. So we did that for a couple of years as Jarasound, and that's how I got into the whole LA circuit. But at the time Jarasound ended, we were headlining and we weren't selling tickets anymore. So SlapBak never sold tickets or anything like that. But it's just, man, it's hard keeping the band together. And honestly, the funny story is we were already lost 2 key players, and they were doing only 2 more gigs with SlapBak. And second to the last gig, Warner Brothers happened to be there. And it's like, wow, I really like you guys. I want to set up and we have been trying to knock doors down before it. And, you know, people get frustrated, and I get it. But we sent out packages to 26 labels, and they all came back saying the same thing. Oh, it's good, but we're not looking for that right now. You know, so you know, people get frustrated, especially if you're one of the ones in the band that were kind of coached and they didn't have it in their heart like I did. So this kind of like, oh, this seems like a cool thing to do, and then you see all the frustrating industry and the ups and downs, and they're like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. And then all of a sudden, Warner Brothers came through at the, you know, last minute.
Well, that was definitely a tough time for bands, especially playing that kind of music, early '90s. Oh, yeah. You know, when the grunge came in, and those other things were happening. But you know, being in that area, were you friends with, or were you influenced at all by some of the other big local bands, like say Fishbone or Red Hot Chili Peppers?
No, but ironically enough, we got signed to Warner Brothers as like a Chili Peppers, Fishbone type of band, because Benny Medina passed on us, and that was like the urban department at Warner Brothers at the time. Then Michael Austin, same day, we had 3 showcases that day. One for David Gampson, one for Benny Medina, one for Michael Austin and Barry Squire. And they saw the first one, and we were kind of fired up, and it was a good one. Benny didn't see we didn't do the best when we did his showcase, but he didn't have the vision for it. He passed on it. But Michael Austin, they didn't really know what to do with this, but they just loved it. So the whole, which was SlapBak's whole venture right to this day, was like, guy, are they urban or are they alternative? What are they, you know? And so they saw a live show. It was very energetic, like kind of like Fishbone and Chili Peppers. And then when they started hearing recordings, they're like, geez, but they sound like P-Funk. So they didn't know what to do. So they sent the demo out to a bunch of producers on Warner Brothers. Prince was one of them. I think Prince called it Imitation Funk. Lenny Kravitz was too expensive at the time, because I wanted Lenny Kravitz if I had to have a producer. and they sent to Larry Blackmon, and Larry Blackmon told the label, "This is great. This is going to be something huge." And they just got excited to hear from someone that has hits. You know, that's a label is pretty much a bank, but when they hear from a producer that has success, they just go like, "Oh, great! If he says so, then I guess we're sitting in a good place," So and I was excited because I was a big Cameo fan. Cameo is one of the bands that I was influenced by.
They were one of the funk bands that went the farthest, the longest before they faded back. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, to see them with the Coca-Cola version of Word Up was like, yeah, they got pretty far. You know what I mean? And so I was excited to work with Larry Blackmon. Then he had me, flew me out, stay in Key Biscayne, Florida for a week and work on the Emotion of Violence Cameo record. And we got to know each other. And the only problem I had with Larry was after we started recording, and it's funny, again, you got to remember I was 21 years old, and it was all about my band and the camaraderie of, I'm down for my guys. But Larry, he's a business guy. So Larry didn't get it after he started working with us. He's like, you just used me to record. So we did 9 songs, and he didn't use the band at all. He just used me. He brought my sisters in to sing one time and didn't use them again, just used me. So he tried to convince me to just calling it Jara, because he didn't understand. He goes, "I don't understand why you have a band. You play everything better than your band. So why do you have a band?" He's just straight to the point like that. I'm just like, "Well, what do you mean? We've been in the trenches together. This is my band." You know what I mean? And I was really sticking up for my band. So I actually went to Warner Brothers and said, "Hey, you're trying to promote a band that really plays," which that was their big thing. "This is a band that really plays." And I go, "But he's not using the band. He's only using me." And tried to stick up for the band. I actually got him fired. And that didn't sit so well with Larry, if you know Larry, the type of person he is. But it's funny, after going through all the trials that I've been through, probably would have been the best idea, and then pull a band in later. I could have established myself as an artist. But then again, I'm not the Prince type. I wasn't the guy to say, "Yeah, I played this. Yeah, I played this." Just, you know what I mean? I was kind of low key. We take pictures of the band. I like to stay like take pictures in the cut. I don't like to be like, "This is me and the band." So I didn't have the Prince mentality. So that's why a lot of people didn't know that I played everything. So I didn't put it out there that way.
What was your sense of Larry Blackmon in a studio setting, though, in terms of his approach and how he conducts his business?
Larry's one thing I never forget, Larry came down to a SlapBak rehearsal, and he stood up against the wall for the whole 3 hours and just watched. And at the end of the rehearsal, he pulled me to the side and he goes, you're way too friendly with your band." That I'll never forget that, because that pretty much tells you how Larry conducts business. And he's cool with you, but he's not going to he doesn't want you to get too comfortable. And of course I understand why he did it. Cameo was extremely tight. They didn't sound like, Cameo never sounded like anyone got comfortable. They were very, Cameo was like, yeah, you were gonna play with Cameo and be tighter than Cameo. So, but that's kind of like how he did it. I'm the total opposite.
Jara, of course, in the early '80s, he also cut half his band loose. So
right.
Yeah.
So so I didn't know too much of Cameo's history past She's Strange, because that's when I got into them, with She's Strange. And then I later hear about Funk and Shake Your Pants, and
like 10 or 12 guys.
Yeah, exactly. But I think a lot of that was the industry. The industry started changing that when it's like the budgets are getting smaller too.
Yeah.
And then by the time we came out, it was really like they weren't trying to sign a 9-piece band. They basically signed me, and at my two sisters signed, an inducement letter. So they had ties to them if they tried to go solo or something, because they like the visual of them. But other than that, they're like, you can have your band if you want to or whatever. But they didn't sign the rest of the band, which is me signed. So, because at that time they're getting 2 rappers and a DJ at that time. It wasn't the Earth, Wind, and Fire time anymore. It's like go on the road with the DJ.
Yeah, it was hip hop.
Right, right. So that's why I think I've always had to mix, because that really was my era. But I was fortunate enough to get the old school, because I was playing Fire as a cover when it was out. But people go, God, how old are you? I'm like, I'm 48, but I was 4 years old playing it. You know what I mean? So it's yeah, it's weird to have 44 years under your belt. And
Well, what do you consider? Bass your primary instrument?
drums.
Drums.
Drums is without a doubt. I can go a lot. Drums doesn't scare me. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of drummers out there incredible, but I understand it enough to where if I wanted to, I played drums long enough and done enough things that, I call myself a drummer. I have a hard time calling myself anything else. Even a bass player, which I have a lot of fans for me playing bass. And I'm like, I don't really, I kind of fell into that position because my bass player kept flaking, and the band said, why don't you just play bass? I'm like, can't be the bass player and the lead singer at the same time. That doesn't look right, And I just tried it one time, and it was the tightest they ever sounded. So I'm like, oh, I guess this does work. But it was like an accident that I even ended up being the lead singer and playing bass,
That's interesting, because Larry Blackmon too was a drummer and ended
Yeah.
up moving up front and singing. So there are definitely some commonalities between you.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. My drumming style comes from Larry Blackmon, Morris Day, Prince, Terry Bozzio, and Stuart Copeland. Then I chewed it all up.
Prince and Morris too are guys that moved up front and did other stuff also.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, the thing that inspired me the most by Prince, I just recently found out. I was kind of bummed. I'm like, oh wait, he's not playing drums, he's just playing snare on it. Was Lady Cab Driver. And the approach to the drums on Lady Cab Driver, that played a big part in what ended up being part of my style. But then I found out, oh yeah, it's drum machine, and he just played the snare on top. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Why the fills are placed the way they're placed, because it's not placed like a drummer that's playing a beat and then does a fill. I always love that about that song.
Yeah. Well, he was so creative with the programming too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So this is a great story. I'm loving it, Jara. Probably at the time it wasn't so great when you're going through all these tribulations, but
yeah, right.
What happened after Larry was kind of out of the picture for that first record?
So then I ended up producing the record only because we ran out of budget, and Warner Brothers didn't want me to produce the record because they just don't feel comfortable with the new guy. They knew I produced the stuff that they heard, and John Edelsby and Terry Coffey were pretty big producers on the climb at that time, and they brought them in, and they came in and said, what am I going to do? Just have Jara produce, because they knew, they were fans, and they go, just have Jara produce it. Anyways, they kind of got forced to it being that way. And so we did it all at my drummer's studio. He had a nice studio in Mission Viejo in his backyard. And the best story is when George Clinton, Fred Wesley, Don Silva, Trey Lude, all came down, Sue Ann Caldwell, all came down like a gang in Mission Viejo. And my drummer's parents are kind of conservative, well-off minded people. That's why he had such a nice studio in his backyard. And George Clinton comes walking through the living room with just a white sheet on.
The rainbow.
Yeah. This is like his heyday of just like I'm the funk. Like there was nothing clean about George at that time. and Fred Wesley. I didn't know who Fred Wesley was at the time, you know. And these guys, here they are, Mission Viejo, putting the funk down on Kicking the Dew, and I just to see these guys work right there. It just, I tell you, man, those are the blessings to me, just to know I've had a chance to, as I was coming into my own, like watching these guys, you know, put something together from nothing. I mean, Kicking the Dew had the groove and everything, but the stuff George would hear or the lyrics he would come up with, I'm just, what is in this guy's brain? Like, George is something else.
Yeah. God bless him. He's still going.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Proud of him. I'm proud of him, you know.
So, but who actually brought you guys together, though?
Bootsy brought George in. Now, Warner Brothers brought Bootsy in. Or they sent him a demo. And they reached out to him because I mentioned that he was one of the guys I would love to work with. And I had just worked with Aunt Fiddler. So I'm like, oh, I'm getting close. You know, Aunt Fiddler is the keyboard player. Maybe I could work with Boot. And when the Bootsy thing happened, I was just crazy because I just seen him earlier that year at the Coach House. And it was the first funk concert that I was like, I felt that concert. It was 1990. It just got done doing Delight. And he was bringing his band back in. That's when I realized that's what funk sounds like live. And it's unfortunate because the year before I saw George Clinton at the Palace when he had Cinderella Theory out, and I was so let down.
That album.
Yeah, you know, but it was funny because I bought that album, and I didn't get into George Clinton until Do Fries Go With That Shake, you know? So again, it's like I started from there, met Norman Whitfield Jr., then went backwards. But I bought Cinderella Theory, and I love like Airbound and
Tweaking,
and I came in the love boat is sailing, you'll be talking tonight. And I knew that Aunt Fiddler wrote that song with them, and that was one of my favorite songs off of that record. So I was excited to work with Aunt Fiddler. But I went from Aunt Fiddler to Bootsy, and then Bootsy came down, stayed in Michigan for a week, was working with me every day, and we got really close. And he's like, you know, George would be great on this song. And my eyes just went like, don't even, what? He was like, I think he's in town mixing Paint the White House Black. So he called up George and played Kicking the Dew over the phone. And George and the whole gang came down that night.
wow.
Talk about a kid just geeked out. I was just like, what is happening to my life all of a sudden? Yeah, it was awesome. So
That was phenomenal. And then Bootsy was on Give Me That Funk also.
yes.
Yeah.
So I wanted George and Bootsy to produce the record because, see, I had a hard time finding producers that fit, and anyone I picked, you know, was either too expensive, and you know, our deal was basically a step above a demo deal. You know, we only at the time $25,000 for an advance and $125,000 for a recording budget was small back then. You know, $500,000 was a good deal, which is funny right now. No one's getting any advances right now, but so it was really hard for me to find a producer. So then I worked with George and Bootsy. I'm like, this is it. This is what works. Are you kidding me? This is meant to happen. And they loved it. They embraced the P-Funk people embraced us so quick. But Warner Brothers was like, they were having problems with George at that time with his record. And I guess he had gone $300,000 over budget. And he wasn't that reliable at the time. And then I go, what about Bootsy? Bootsy can't produce it without George. I'm like, so that's why they wouldn't let us have them, you know, produce a record.
Wow.
But that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted.
Yeah. Who won? How much time did you actually get to spend with those guys? Was it a couple of hours? Was it a couple of days?
Bootsy, we spent a lot of hours every day for a week. And then whenever you come in town, like for the awards, or he would call me up, I go meet him. Like we we got pretty tight for a while, and then, you know, you just get busy. And at that time, I was like the worst person for staying in touch with people. I was really bad at that. Bad now. I was 10 times worse back then.
Well, it was before cell phones.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That would have been easier just to send a text. Hey, Bootsy, how you doing? You know what I mean? But back then,
It's before the internet, as a matter of fact.
right.
Yeah.
Very true. But George, it was just that day, and then we did a couple shows with George. So, then I saw George like 8 years later, and he totally remembered me and gave me a hug. We were talking about the recording and stuff, but I didn't see George often.
He remembers stuff, I mean,
it's crazy. I didn't think he would with all the drugs he used to do.
Yeah, even me, I had not seen him in a number of years, went backstage, so he remembered me, give me a hug,
Wow, that's great. Yeah, he's good. I like George.
So, I don't think we actually mentioned by name. So we're talking about the first record, which was called Food Funkateers, 1992. And, highly recommended. I knew about it because I was such a P-Funk fan. So anything that they were associated with, I immediately went to and made sure I got it.
Gotcha.
But the whole record was solid and funky. So that was the good news for me.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So once you got it out there, how'd you feel about the support or lack of support that you got, and what eventually happened with that record?
Well, it 92.3 The Beat, at least for LA, really kind of jump started. And because I think what happened with Warner Brothers, I know what happened for a fact, is they just like, well, we got to put this thing out. It was kind of a disaster getting there because Larry's fired, doesn't happen. Terry came in and John Ellsby, and then they kind of fake like they're producing. Everything was such a ordeal. And about the time we just had it finished, they put it out in the fall of '92, and I think they just put it out to see who grabs at it. And that's funny. The first shipment went pretty well, and I think because they had George Clinton and Bootsy on the back, and Larry Blackmon and Susan Rogers, he makes Prince and stuff. There's enough names on the back that I think record stores and everybody were like, oh, well, let's check this out. This is interesting. Fast Food Funkateers, French fries on the cover, And somehow it fell in the hands of Big John, who was the musical programmer at the time when musical programmers mattered at 92.3, and he just started playing 24 Below on Funky Friday. And then he started playing Kicking and Doing Funky Friday. Then he started playing, Don't Know My Heart to Go on Funky. He played like maybe 5 songs off of it, and he would do it. Funky Friday only lasted, I think, 3-4 hours on a Friday, and he would play so much SlapBak just on Funky Friday, and he gave us the name, like the New Keepers of the Funk. That's what he would call us on the radio. And he helped force Warner Brothers to releasing True Confessions as a single, because he said if they release it as a single, he would put it on, light rotation. And Warner Brothers were like, we spend money trying to get radio programmers to play, songs, and here they're like volunteering to play your stuff. And I really got to give it up to him because he really kind of kickstarted the thing. But then the thing that's deep about it is that Benny Medina passed on us. So the minute urban radio started grabbing at us, there's so much politics, because we're like, hey, we're with the guys that have Black Crow and Chili Peppers and Faith No More, and how are these guys getting played on the beat and it's not coming through us? So the urban department didn't really want to lift a finger to help, because we were kind of in their turf and they passed on us. And then college radio started grabbing at it. So we would have people show up at our gigs that looked like Marilyn Manson, black fingernails, like they were fans of SlapBak. We had such a wide reach. Younger people, older people liked it because they heard the old school in it. But then there was just we didn't have a solid machine behind us, you know. But ironically enough, when Warner Brothers was dropping a lot of artists in '93, we had just done Blue Light Special, and I did it myself on like just 12 tracks because I just gone completely opposite of the first record. I'm like, I went from I hate the red tape. I'm going to go just underground. I'm going to buy a 12 track. I'm going to record it at, our band house, did drums in the kitchen, use Radio Shack mics, and turned it in and just said, either take it or not, because I didn't care at that time. And Benny Medina spoke up at the annual meeting and said, actually, I heard the new stuff and I like it. So then they kept us on board for a Blue Light Special. People don't realize I walked away from Warner Brothers, which I wish I hadn't have. But my manager advised me at the time. He goes, because they said they're going to push the record back 6 months, which gave us an option to walk if we wanted to. So we chose to walk because we thought we'd take it over to Columbia and over there with Randy Jackson. It's just the band started falling apart. It got sloppy because people were like, oh, we're not with Warner Brothers anymore. You know what I mean? It's this whole venture. You'll never have enough time to hear the story of what SlapBak has been through and the ups and downs. It's a crazy story.
Yeah.
It's a real crazy story.
The politics of the labels and all that was going on in the 80s and 90s, it's craziness.
Yeah.
I've heard so many horror stories about the politics and how, great records were, held back, not supported. And it just, some of the ones that were just, sort of no rhyme or reason to it almost,
Right. Sad.
Got to be maddening.
Yeah.
This is me off.
Yeah, it tends to piss off the listeners more than it does the artists sometimes, because the listeners are just as hungry for good music as it is for artists to want to put something good out there. And are you familiar with Stevie Salas?
Oh yeah, great guitar player.
Yeah, so
I played with Bootsy also.
Right. So I didn't know Stevie Salas at the time. He's one of the people that Warner Brothers tried to get to produce us because they wanted that mix of alternative flavor in there, because Warner Brothers didn't want to go more at least the department we're with. It makes sense. We were with like the alternative department. They wanted to put just enough edge in there to where college radio would grab at it or alternative radio would grab at it. And I remember they brought me a CD of Stevie Salas, Buddy Miles, and Bootsy Collins, and I'm like,
Third eye.
Yeah, I was like, this isn't the sound I'm looking for. And then, 20 years later, I ended up working with Stevie Salas, and we recorded like, 3 or 4 records together. And it's kind of funny. And I told him, I go, you were pitched to me like 17 years ago. And I said, hell no. We're buddies now. But Stevie, I learned a lot from Stevie Salas, and because he's a great producer.
He's one of the great sort of unsung people in the industry.
Yes. And he told me something that really stuck with me that kind of changed my whole path. Is I was still, up until Yellow Funkography, still trying to do songs that I thought would be good for radio. And then I remember working with Stevie, and I'm like, God, this is a great radio song. He goes, I make songs for radio. He goes, I just make good records. I'm not worried about radio anymore. I'm like, that's a good point. And from that point on, I just like, I'm not worried about radio. Radio's different. You know what I mean? It's not where listeners like you and people that have the ears, they're not really listening to radio, because radio is just, it's about something else. Radio's about something else.
And that's a double-edged sword of the internet,
Yeah.
It has so much power to be able to find and expose that music, but monetizing it is a whole different thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for sure. People think because we have YouTube that is great, because now you can reach everybody. I'm like, no, YouTube is a big, huge ocean. So all YouTube is just as hard to get fans with YouTube, because you still have to have a machine behind, some sort of machine, whether it's you sitting at the computer every single day, hustling, reaching out, posting, it doesn't make it easy because we have YouTube and Facebook,
It's just more grassroots.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. If you cut out for it, you can really do it. Some of us that come from the old school, it's like, wait, what? You want us to what?
Yeah. I don't want to get my hands dirty with that.
Right. You know what I mean? I'd rather get my hands dirty in the studio. We have to sit there and make friends and this and that. You know what I mean? It's a whole
You gotta play the game.
yeah. And now I like it.
Great.
You know what I'm saying? I like it now because I've reached a place to where what I want to do with music has to do more with actually reaching to people and actually interacting with people. So, I'm at a different place now.
That's the real exciting part, is you can get almost something out there almost immediately and get feedback right away.
Right.
That is very cool.
Yeah, for sure.
I wanted to share with you that I had seen SlapBak, on at least a couple of occasions in the 90s, and I can't remember exactly. I saw so many shows. I can't remember the exact show, but you said you opened for P-Funk. I might have seen one of those, and I'm thinking that I probably saw you guys play like the Key Club or one of those types of places. I mean, it was great. I loved it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It scares me because then I first thing I think of, what version of SlapBak did he see? I have my favorites.
Well, it would have been the 90s for sure.
Yeah. If you played the Key Club, for sure. I think we warmed up for Living Color there one time.
I saw Living Color there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right up in that show. Wow. 2001.
That was very cool.
Yeah.
Also saw Nickelback there, which I think was Steve Salas.
Yeah, and Bernard Fowler.
Yeah. Backstage, I met Keith Richards was there.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right. He's buddies. Because Bernard's been with them for 25 years. The Rolling Stones.
Yeah, so that was a bit surreal. But
so we were touring the four of us. It was Bernard Fowler, Stevie Salas, myself, and Dave Abraziz, the original drummer from Pearl Jam.
Nice.
Yeah, it was an interesting lineup, but it was cool.
Mostly playing rock, or what kind of song?
Yeah, it was more the rock stuff, which I like too.
Yeah.
Well,
SlapBak has that edge. I mean, that's why I like it. I mean.
Right. Oh, thank you.
Bringing those diverse elements together is what really makes something special. You talk about, you have the new wave background, and came up from that, and you got the old funk, and you got the rock, and that's what makes it a melting pot, makes it special to me.
Absolutely. I love that you said new wave. That's new wave. I like that. Yes.